Hello, everybody. You're listening to Season 3, Episode 5 of the Attempt Adventure Podcast, a podcast all about travel, finding adventure every day, and seeking out adventurous ways to make life a little more interesting. From Dallas, Texas, I'm your host, James Barrett, joined as always by my co-host,
Michael DeRogers in China Spring, Texas. Not as always, but as always, your co-host.
Today we have a great interview for you guys. Mike Keene, adventure chef and prolific kayaker, and just all around awesome dude.
What a cool guy. Yeah, I am super excited about this one. I mean, what a cool guy. James, there's a few things in this world that I really love. I love food. I love adventure. And I really like kayaking. I mean, I'm not going to say I'm a prolific kayaker. I've kayaked.
I have been in a kayak. We'll get into that in just a few minutes, everybody.
I need to interrupt before that, James, because we actually have some administrative things we have to do. Somebody bought us a beer, James, and I've got one right here for us. It is Speckle, my nephew, I guess, my brother's cat. So, do the math on that one. But Speckle, the cat, this one's for you. Have you had this one, James? This is an Upside Down from Martin House.
I have not.
Okay, it is a lactose sour with pineapples, cherries, and cake flavoring. So it's a pineapple upside down cake flavored sour. So,
Well, you have that. I have a water.
You're much healthier than I am. Here we go. It's 9 o'clock at night. It's not like I'm usually when we're recording, it's like 7 in the morning. I'm like, well, I guess I got to drink a beer. It's not like that. This is actually
it's time.
Appropriate time. Here we go.
I just don't have any.
There we go. It's very sour. It is very sour, but it's good. I recommend it. You might like it. Cheers. It's got a strange flavor.
This water is.
But,
yeah, Martin House, great brewery, weird flavors.
Weird flavors, but I like them. Almost all of them.
Thank you, Speckle the cat.
That's right. Yeah, that's right. And if anyone else wants to either buy us a beer or be a monthly supporter on our Ko-fi page, you can do that. If you just love the show, you can throw us, $1 a month. Or you can buy us a beer for, whatever you want. Make a little donation and we'll have a beer. We'll shout you out on the show.
Yeah, and it goes a long way.
It does.
Any little bit of support goes a long way to helping us make this better.
Yes. You guys may have noticed our new logo that's gone up in the last week. That's all thanks to you guys, our supporters, those of you who have donated. So thanks a lot. Yeah, we're using old equipment, but it works. I don't feel the need to really update this ancient microphone I'm using.
Nah, it works.
We've been using the same microphone since 2019, since the early days of day drinking with Michael and James.
Yeah, and we recorded our first episode without microphones at all, and it was awful.
Terrible. We didn't even have a topic.
Terrible. No, we just, anything, if you are able and you want to donate, it helps a lot. And we really appreciate it. No pressure at all.
We've kind of restructured it. We don't have any special tiers. There's no bonus content or anything right now. It's just if you like the show and you want to support us. That's literally it. There's no pressure. You don't have to. We do this because we enjoy it. But if you do like the show, buy us a beer. Please.
Awesome. Well, Michael, have you done anything new or adventurous this past week or since we last talked?
I certainly have, James. Since we last talked, I took a road trip last week. My wife is in town, and we're both in the States now. We took a road trip up to Arkansas, drove up through Texarkana, spent the first night in Hot Springs, which is a great town, neat little national park. It's one of the smaller national parks. It's very small, but it's really fun. I don't know. When was the last time you've been over there? Have you been?
I've never been.
Oh, really? Okay. It's great because you can tour these historic bathhouses, which were, in the day where people would come for any number of illnesses from all around the country to convalesce. It's really interesting. And they have fountains all throughout the town where you can, drink the mineral water. So we had our big Buc-ee's tumblers. We filled them up with mineral water on the way out of town, drank it. It's really good. It tastes great. It's really, really good water. And let me tell you something, James. I love water. I don't get those people that are like, I don't like water. How can you not like water? You're like a being.
You're a mammal.
But as water goes, the water in Hot Springs is really good.
Is it?
It's a cool little town, yeah. Then we drove up through the mountains and up through the Ozarks to the very northwest tip of Arkansas. I'm talking we were right on the border, real close to Branson up there, to Eureka Springs. Another cool, funky little town. Very neat little artsy town up in the mountains there. Driving in Arkansas is terrible. The roads, even the highways, are extremely narrow, and like it's mountains. Like you just are twisting and winding for hours. You see these signs that are like, warning, very winding, very steep, next 32 miles or something. It's just awful, but it's beautiful. It's a very sort of remote place. Arkansas, very rural, up in the mountains there. Eureka Springs is neat. It's on like a hillside town. It's very hard to find a parking spot because everything is extremely steep. You kind of just have to park and then take the town trolley, which is a lot of fun. So we took the town trolley. We went to go see the Christ of the Ozarks, which is kind of like Cristo Redentor, but not as impressive.
But Arkansas instead of Rio de Janeiro.
But we had some amazing food, some good Arkansas catfish, great diner downtown for breakfast. And then we drove back and spent the last night in Texarkana, which was a little bit more driving than I had really intended because, again, you have to go really slow on these winding roads. Like I'm talking, like you're going like 30, 40 miles an hour because it's so steep and so winding up in the Ozark Mountains. So the distances didn't look very far, but it was really slow going. But that last night we stayed in Texarkana and took a picture at the second most photographed post office in the country after the old post office in DC, which is cool because it's on the state line. It has like a line that goes through it. Then we drove over to, I think I'm saying it right because I asked when we were there, Fouke, 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 I believe, which is like 15 miles outside of Texarkana in Arkansas, home to the Boggy Creek Monster. It is the Arkansas Bigfoot. So we went to the museum there at this little gas station / mini mart / museum. And I bought a mug with Bigfoot on it. And so apparently Bigfoot haunts the woods of Arkansas, which I'll tell you, like when you're driving through there at night, you kind of can, you can believe it. You can believe it.
Fun fact about the mountain range over there, because that's the Ozark Mountain is it part of the Appalachian chain?
It's a little bit far west, I think, isn't it? Because Arkansas is just north of Texas. But double check that. Fact check me, James. I'm not sure.
Yes, they are.
Are they? Okay, wow.
So, the Appalachian Mountain Range, it is the same mountain range as the Scottish Highlands.
Interesting.
2, it is older than the first land mammal.
That's old.
They are older than trees. So when John Denver said, life is old there, older than the trees.
Oh, that's what he meant.
Maybe, I don't know. And coincidentally, older than John Denver, too.
Well, very much so.
I believe they're the oldest mountain range on Earth.
I think I've heard that. And James, when you're out there at night, we were in Eureka Springs, and we were at this cool little hotel lodge with a balcony overlooking just the woods, like the deep woods, And even there, kind of in the town, you're like, I can see how people. I'm not saying they saw Bigfoot, but I can understand how if you're out in the woods alone at night in those dark, ancient woods, how you might think that you saw.
Oh yeah. No, they're creepy, and if you're out there at night, it's almost like oppressive.
Yeah, it's dark
in a weird way. It's dark and it's old.
Driving through there, I was like, "Oh, I'm uncomfortable." Like I was uncomfortable driving through there. Not like because of the roads. I mean, that was creepy in a different way. It's just
a weird feeling out there.
It was, and it's very hard to put into words. We had an episode about this. If you guys go back and listen to our Halloween 2020 episode,
it's beautiful though. Highly recommend.
So that's what I did, James. That's what I did.
Awesome. Well, that sounds fun.
Yeah. What about you? What have you been up to?
Michael, my hunt for specific ingredients is often in vain.
Yes. Now, you like to cook. I know this. You like to cook, and you like to experiment, and you like to try to find, like you say, specific ingredients to facilitate that. Yes.
2 of the things that I had the hardest time finding, one of which still in the hunt for, pandan. If anyone knows, anybody out there in the States knows where I can get it, let me know. But the other one is just Thai basil, holy basil. Mm-hmm. I finally found it.
Yeah, you sent me a picture and you were so excited.
Finally found it. So instead of just trying to I actually didn't make anything with the bunch I bought. Mm-hmm. What I did was I took cuttings from it, and I am rooting them right now, and I'm going to plant my own, and I will never run out again.
Awesome.
I've never planted anything before.
Yeah.
So we'll see how this goes.
That's certainly an adventure. That's really cool. I was so excited when you sent me that picture, because I've been searching here too. Like, we've been looking.
I still need that basil chicken recipe.
Okay. Yes, I will send that over to you. Absolutely.
But yeah, so not as exciting as a vacation, which I'm going on vacation in 3 days.
Well, we'll talk about that next episode. Hopefully you'll have some good stuff to talk about then.
Oh, yeah. But yeah, so I'm growing holy basil.
Nice. And that actually ties in really well with the theme of today's episode of cooking and like sort of homesteading. Yeah. Hey, and speaking of homesteading, James, you and I went to a homestead last week.
Oh, we did. That's also something new.
I forgot about that. James and his wife came down and met me and my wife here. But it was not the best day to be in China Spring. So China Spring is about a 3-minute drive from Waco Regional Airport. And if you follow the news, there was an unsavory character at Waco Regional Airport holding a political rally on the 30th anniversary of the Branch Davidian thing.
And it became a wretched hive of scum.
It was indeed. There were more flags of abhorrent slogans than I've ever seen in my life. We wanted to get out of town, so James came and rescued us and pulled us away from this tiny little town, which does not deserve the likes of him. And so we were like, let's get out of Waco. So that's where our story begins.
Yeah, and so why don't you explain what Heritage Homestead is real quick, because you can explain it better than I can.
Heritage Homestead is a homestead and working farm in the Anabaptist tradition. And it's open to people of all faiths and all beliefs or whatever. But they have it's a working farm. They grow vegetables, they have crops, they have little like local shops.
Yeah.
They have a blacksmith, and they have like a mill where they make flour, like a real water mill where they grind up wheat and make it into flour. They have a cheese cave. It's just all sorts of stuff. Like they make jam and they have
a lot of great stuff.
Woodworking where they make like rocking chairs. Like it's a farm. It's kind of like an old fashioned farm, and these families live out there. They have a homestead out there.
Yeah, and so we decided to do that when it was more something like, well, we need something to do.
That's not in Waco.
But I really enjoyed it.
Yeah.
It's one of those things where you go to it and you're like, you will see, but then you're like, oh, this is really nice, actually. So yeah, highly recommend. Shout out to Heritage Homestead. Would you ever consider homesteading?
We've kind of, Pinky and I have talked about this. We've been talking a little bit about not full time, but buying some land up in, a couple hours outside of Bangkok and having a little bit of a mini farm or homestead, just a place to get away from the city. It's nowhere in the near future by any means, but it's something that we've talked about. I think it'd be fun having some free range chickens maybe and growing some veggies. I don't know. What about you? Same
kind of thing. Again, it's one of those things where like the ideal of it is better than, for me, the reality would be. I unfortunately am very attached to my conveniences. And that's its own issue we're not going to get into. We're not going to break down my mental barriers today.
Psychoanalyze, James today.
Tune in next week. Where, but I think I would like something in the middle, something where I can have an area to grow some food or have some chickens or do something like that, but not. I don't want to run a farm.
Yeah, no, I don't want to run a commercial farm by any means.
Definitely not. But like if I could grow some vegetables or some fruit trees or have some chickens or a couple goats or something like that would be really nice.
Yeah.
A nice piece of land.
There's something about that, isn't that? Like producing something that you can consume yourself.
Well, it's just something I think of just doing.
Yeah.
Something, it's very, I'm trying to think of a good word that doesn't sound stupid. It's very like...
hands-on, like natural. I mean,
it's a way of living that was everyone's way of living for thousands of years. That's how people lived. The urban living that we do today over the course of human history is very, very recent.
Last like 300 years, maybe.
Yeah. And and in America, even less.
Yeah. We're talking like 100 years, if that.
Yeah. There was a time not that long ago where everyone had their own little farm and everyone grew food or small communities got together and did it or whatever. But so there's something it's a way of living that's, I don't know. I think people are weirdly kind of meant to do that.
Yeah.
I know that sounds kind of like kitschy and weird, but it's like, humans want to do that kind of thing. Like you get a lot of satisfaction from doing stuff like that.
Yeah. Why are farming sim games so popular?
It's peace, but we can talk about that in another episode. That'd be good.
Sure.
Why is Farming Simulator popular? I can't get into it, but I tried.
No, I think you're right, and I think that's a really good point, and I agree with you on that. I think there is something about that I find really appealing.
I think it's more kind of not being in the hustle and bustle of everything. It's kind of a way to sustain yourself without needing other people.
And you're staying busy, but you're actually being productive. You're not just earning money, which ultimately is something intangible, right? You're being productive, but you're making something, like truly productive in the most literal sense of it.
Especially if you I'm building my house or building, these, you have a tangible, like you said, tangible results of your work. So yeah, I think it's very satisfying.
Yes. And even just visiting there when we went and spent the day out there, it was just relaxing. It was nice.
It's just nice. And it's nice to see people that live that way by choice and not by, some necessity or some whatever. But, which, that does kind of lead us pretty good right into the interview.
It does. Right. Well, without further ado, I guess, ladies and gentlemen, let's have a listen to the interview segment. This is Mike Keene. I hope you enjoyed the episode as much as we did.
Hello, my name's Mike Keene. I'm based in the east of England in a county called Suffolk, which is right on the North Sea. So good for kayaking. I guess I'm a chef adventurer. I do a lot of kayaking actually, and cooking on the beach, wild foraging, cooking over fire, fermentation, that kind of stuff. So very much eating from your environment, not relying on the global food system, trying to go, I wouldn't class myself as a prepper or anything like that, but I'm very much into trying to live without all the modern conveniences that seem so great, but actually looking beneath the surface contribute a lot of damage to the environment.
So what does adventure mean to you, and how did you get started adventuring?
Yeah, adventuring. I've lived abroad most of my life. I've been a chef most of the time, or in hospitality. So I've travelled and worked abroad in loads of different circumstances. And I guess the older I get, and the more long in the tooth, the more kind of extreme or more difficult circumstances, I kind of get a buzz off those. It's I don't think it's chasing a buzz is why I do it, but it's getting that experience. As a kid, I grew up in Nigeria and Saudi Arabia, and you really notice the difference when you come back to the UK or somewhere in the West, the difference between your experiences and how you perceive the world to people who have just been perhaps a little bit more insular. And I think getting out there, putting yourself into kind of conditions or situations that aren't in your comfort zone or make you a little bit uncomfortable, as long as it's not dangerous or intentionally dangerous, then I think it's all good character building. And I definitely think it's something that kids of today really need to be exposed to more, rather than just sitting in their little bubble. Because you do get a really skewed version of the world. But I think if you've been out there and doing it, it's the best education, beats school and universities and colleges by a long shot. But adventures can be anything. It's not a classic Shackleton type adventure in my mind, but adventure can be if you've got an afternoon, just take yourself off and go for a walk somewhere that you haven't been before. Just experience it. I think everyone, especially in the age of social media and Instagram, etc., is so aspirational. They feel they've got to do something that's over and beyond, has never been done before. But it's only internally that you've got to kind of prove yourself, I think. And if you go somewhere new, then that's brilliant. What a great experience.
That's exactly the philosophy of our podcast. We kind of just define adventure as, anything that breaks your routine, anything that just kind of gets you out there doing something new.
Yeah, it makes you feel so much better as well when you get back.
Absolutely.
Even though before you go, you get, can I be bothered to do that? Time. It's been brilliant. Yeah, really good.
Well, speaking of adventure, you've got a big expedition coming up. Can you tell us a little bit about that? Yeah,
so 4 weeks today, actually, I head off to Greenland, and a week after that, once I've kind of acclimatized to this diet, which I'll tell you about afterwards, I start paddling from Kakortok, right in the south on the west coast, and I head 3,000 kilometers up the west coast northwards to Karnak, which is the northernmost permanently inhabited place in the world. I was there a couple of years ago. I've spent the last 3 summers in Greenland, but it's a solo kayak. I'll be wild camping. I'm aiming to cover 30 kilometers a day, which doesn't sound a lot, but if you factor in downtime for storms or bad weather, then I think 30k is kind of a manageable amount. And hopefully, by the time it gets to June 21st, Midsummer's Day, where I'll be in Greenland, it'll be 24 hours a day sunlight. So if I've got some good days and it's nice, clear sailing, I can push it a little further. I'll probably have to make up some time. The bit that is a little bit unsure of at the moment is in the north because of the sea ice. It breaks up at different times every year, and it's even more kind of unpredictable because of climate change lately. So I've gone through the last few years NASA satellite images, and it could be okay by the time I get up to kind of Ilulissat, which is that 2/3 of the way up. But there's a possibility I might have to kind of wait it out until the sea ice is broken up and there's some bigger channels to get through. So that's going to be the interesting bit, I think. Well, there's loads of interesting bits in it, polar bears, icebergs, all that kind of stuff, but that could make a big difference to the end date.
So what's this about the diet? Because I know there's an element of scientific research as well as culinary research.
Yeah. Well, there's kind of two scientific projects. The first one is I'll be collecting intestinal samples of sea mammals as I go on behalf of the British Antarctic Survey, plus a couple of other scientific organisations. And that is I'll send these samples back to, I think it's going back to Cambridge at the moment, here in the UK, and they'll be measuring microplastic within the samples. When I say samples, I mean poo. So, seal, walrus, polar bear if I can get hold of any, and so it's purely from a kind of pollution aspect to measure how much microplastic is in the coastal waters as they go. And the samples from the poo of these animals are one of the best ways of taking it, because they go from the surface down to the bottom, and what they're eating is obviously stuff that lives in that area. So it's a really good indication of the levels of pollution in that area. The main one for me as a chef is the other project, which I'll be only eating a Inuit diet as I go, a traditional Inuit diet. So for thousands of years, the Inuit survived off just what's in their environment. So fish, seal, reindeer, salmon, occasional seaweed, seabirds, seabird eggs, that kind of thing. So that's what got me interested in Greenland was the diet. It was incredible. These guys are just eating 100% sea mammals or fish, and they survive off it. You know, in the West, we become so used to, relying on a fridge and safe methods and temperature check-in, and if it's a day past its sell-by, throw it away. But all that just goes totally out the window. It does a complete 180 out there, and that's what kind of got me into it. It was like, how the hell can these guys survive? Because as a chef in the West, I've been trained my whole career to, if it's a day past its sell-by, throw it away, or if it looks dodgy, throw it away. Yeah. Turns out that's pretty much wrong. It's not the best thing for the planet if we're chucking so much food away. So I'll be doing that, and I've linked up with an amazing bunch of microbiologists all around the world, from Stanford to North Carolina, Nuuk, and over in Cork in Ireland. And Professor Tim Spector, who does a lot of nutrition and diet stuff here in the UK, he is doing a full run of tests on me 2 days before I leave, a DEXA scan, bloods, urine, stool samples, and then we'll be doing that again immediately on my return, and just to measure the difference between what's happened to me physiology-wise over the 3-month paddling and on that diet. But also, I'll be sending samples of my gut microbiome, again, poo, back to these scientists, and they'll be measuring the bacteria that's on the food that I'm eating and the bacteria that's in my gut microbiome, and how that's affected my mental well-being, my gut, and my general health, especially in such a kind of an endurance situation. So I think it's going to be a pretty groundbreaking study, actually. There's going to be some really good information coming out. So that's exciting stuff.
I think that's amazing. It's not just adventure for fun, which there's definitely merit to that, but it's adventure for a greater purpose as well. I think that's really cool.
Yeah, thanks. Because I'll be by myself pretty much most of the time. Paddling for long periods can get pretty boring and tedious. Right. So with the polar bear precautions that I've got to take with the tent and stuff like that, it's going to take a good hour at least to set up and break down the tent and my camp each night. And there will be a fair bit of downtime if I'm in a storm and there's 2 days of I just can't get out on the boat. I'm going to be bored. So, just kind of filling it with a really detailed journal, taking samples, accessing and hunting for food. It's going to be a good time waster.
Great. Well, what are these polar bear precautions that you mentioned? How do you actually protect your camp from polar bears?
I've got flares, and I've got a flare pistol, and I'll have a rifle that we strap to the deck in a dry bag as I go. Because I'm by myself, I can't obviously be on watch 24/7 because I've got to sleep at some point. So, which would normally happen in polar bear country. But for this one, there's a double tripwire that you can put on posts, set it up around the tent. And on each post is a double blank cartridge. So if the tripwire is broken, it fires a double blank, so it will go off immediately, and then it fires 30 foot in the air and goes off again. So that's kind of got two purposes. The first will hopefully be to scare the polar bear away. Right. I fear it's going to scare me even more when I'm in my tent and going, oh my God, why? And I'll have the rifle there and flares. And as soon as I hear that, I've just got to get out of the tent and make a big noise and hopefully scare the beast away, which would be great. Right. The rifle's there for life or death situation.
Sure.
But hopefully, if you make a lot of noise and you've got a flare and I can fire a flare towards it, not at it, then I'm hoping that's gonna do the job.
Right. Wow.
I'll let you know.
Yeah, definitely.
Or won't let you know.
Definitely.
Well, what inspired the expedition? What got you interested in Greenland?
I was pitching a book project about 10 years ago, but it finally came to fruition 3 years ago, and I went out to Denmark and then Faroes, Iceland, and Greenland, following the story of the Norse as they kind of migrated across the North Atlantic from Norway. The further west they got, the more extreme and more interesting the food preservation practices got, because there's nothing like today. Obviously, 1,000 years ago they had no GPS. They had to rely on their wits and what was in their environment. And so the Faroes, they fermented lamb. There's hardly any trees on any of these places, so you can't evaporate seawater to create salt to preserve stuff, which would have been the kind of de rigueur one. So they had to find a different way, and it just turns out that leaving it in the environment can also do the trick. So they've got fermented lamb in the Faroes. In Iceland, they've got fermented more extreme stuff like fermented shark, the Greenland shark over there, which is very high in ammonia, and makes your eyes water almost. And then when you get to Greenland, so they've got a whole history of stuff over there. So they've the fermented seal fat, fermented seal, fermented cod, seabird eggs, and then the most interesting one was kiviak up in the far north, where they catch hundreds of these little orc seabirds when they're migrating kind of April, May time. And they pack about 500 of them or so inside a seal, sew the seal up, press all the air out and bury it under rocks for 6 months. And then they unearth it, bite the head off, drink the liquefied insides, and then the meat on the breasts and the legs has almost gone like pate. You can almost just kind of slough it off with your fingers and eat it. It tastes pretty much as extreme as it sounds, but if you close your eyes, you'd think you're eating a super strong, like Stilton or a Gorgonzola, a really strong cheese, which is incredible. But because it's meat, I think that's where the kind of disparity comes, and you go, hang on, it shouldn't taste like this. But that's just that's just from what we've been used to as we've grown up. One of the team with the microbiome project actually is an anthropologist from the University of Michigan, and he's done a lot of studies into the disgust reflex and how people, especially like polar explorers, have had to adopt the Inuit diet when they've had to overwinter 100 years ago or so. And it's like super interesting because the fermentation, the extreme stuff, is really loved by people who are used to it. And that's how we got into the whole disgust is a learned reflex. It's not inherent in our genes, or it's not part of our hardwired physiology. It's something that we learn, which kind of makes sense because when you're a kid, you're so fussy and you hate all kinds of stuff, especially the strong stuff. Any strong cheeses or meats or anything like that, you kind of steer away from. But as you get older, you kind of love that stuff. The stuff that's really strong, like anchovies and stuff, is great. So that's where we're coming from. And that it's going to be. It's going to be super interesting. And because of the last 3 years when I've spent time in Greenland kayaking and cooking, I've eaten a lot of it. And you do, within the same day, if you've eaten enough of it, you just start to, actually, this is all right. This is pretty good stuff. And the other thing is how nature kind of looks after you. And vitamin C and scurvy is a big issue with extreme environments. Like the sailors in the 17th and 18th centuries used to die by the hundreds because they didn't have vitamin C. But it turns out that animal intestines, especially sea mammals and fish, have high amounts of vitamin C. If you ferment seal fat, the process of fermentation converts some of the nutrients into vitamin C. Seal eyeballs as well are high in vitamin C. It's incredible how kind of nature kind of provides for you. It's really, really incredible. But that's the whole part of the fascination with kind of evolutionary anthropology and how indigenous peoples ended up in the countries and the areas that they've been in and how they survived.
Well, you briefly touched on some of the environmental issues.
Yeah.
What do you think are some of the most pressing environmental issues that are facing the Arctic region?
Well, mainly because it's in the Arctic, you've got that huge amount of ice on the ice cap of Greenland. 80% of Greenland is ice cap, but it's retreating at a really fast rate, faster than anywhere else in the world, and they continually have higher temperatures, record-breaking high temperatures in the summers, and crazy amounts, much more than anywhere else. So that's a huge issue, for the whole world. It's going to affect everywhere because the low-lying regions are just going to get flooded over the next few decades because it's coming from the Arctic. Obviously, Greenland is the biggest one, and that's kind of the poster boy for climate change, really, at the moment. But then you've got the whole population of like 57,000, I think it is, spread over a country that's bigger than Europe. So it's very remote, and a lot of them are on sea-lying the coastal areas. So the flooding is going to be a problem there as well. But then also part of the reason for climate change is obviously fossil fuels and the endless exploitation of the earth for mining, coal, precious metals, and that kind of stuff. And ironically, with the retreating of the glaciers and the ice cap, it's exposing areas that are really rich in all these kind of precious ores and metals, especially now as we're looking at smartphones and chips and that kind of stuff, which use the more rarer metals. Right. And so they're getting bombarded with these companies that have billions of dollars behind them to go mining. So Greenland is particularly vulnerable to exploitation by these mining companies. And luckily, the government is really, really strong and really pro-environment. But that's a lot of pressure to come under financially. So they've got to be protected, I think, by the rest of the world to not capitulate and go for these huge, great, really lucrative mining concessions that will give them loads of money. But on the flip side, it's going to poison fjords and the sea and just strip the landscape. So it's a real catch-22. But historically, they turned down a uranium mine couple of years ago now in the south, which is great because it would have flooded the runoff of chemical laden waters and waste going into the fjords. Would have been disastrous for the ecosystems around there. That's a really encouraging sign. And there's a big decolonise movement because they've got home rule, but they are kind of ruled by Denmark. Right. So there's a big movement to decolonise, but they have, I think it's something around 5 billion euros each year. They're subsidised by Denmark, which if that was reduced or went, that's a huge amount of money to make up. So tourism or mining companies, and at some point the mining companies just going to throw enough money at it. So that needs to be looked at. And obviously you've got the different political powers. You've got China, Russia, America, plus others all kind of putting pressure onto their companies come into this place. So it's just got to raise awareness of this and get as much exposure and public pressure on there as much as we can, I think.
So for your expedition, what are you most concerned about? What are some of the biggest challenges that you're expecting to face?
The one that's going to give you most anxiety will be the polar bear thing, I think. Even though it's probably not realistically number one on the list, it's just the thought of it. And if I hear something in the night, oh my God, is that a polar bear? So that's. But I've kind of done all the safety things I can on that. Other things will be finding a safe area to launch from or land. So if I've been paddling for 6 hours, I need to kind of plan possible stop routes. So there are areas where the mountains just go straight into the sea, and there won't be anywhere I can possibly land or rest up on for maybe tens of kilometres. So I'm going to have to seriously plan that.
Do you do that via satellite? How do you know sort of where you're planning to land?
Yeah, I'm going on good old-fashioned maps as my daily kind of go-to. You can get pretty much good, reliable information from that, as well as tapping into local knowledge, which is super important. But I'll have a really good GPS system and map for the upcoming kind of 2 or 3 days. I'll highlight areas where I can possibly stop. So if the weather picks up and it's getting hard going or the tide's against me, then I'll have, I'm going to have to go back to that 5K back, or perhaps I can push forward and hit that one in 2K time. But I don't really want to be caught out by that, because that could be a pretty horrible situation. You've got icebergs, unbelievable. They're everywhere on the coast of Greenland. But then if you've been kayaking near to one that's flipped over or is carved, it's absolutely terrifying. The noise is just, you can feel it all through you, and it's a scary thing. So I've got a good, healthy regard for icebergs, but also you have the tsunami as well. If it's a big iceberg or a big carving off a glacier, it's going to create a tsunami. So if you're sometimes within 100 meters of it, it can cause a tsunami that's also peppered with ice chunks. It's like metal that can damage the kayak, can damage me. So yeah, that's one. But that's a very visible thing. You can do things to mitigate that. And then you've also got whales, potential whale breaches. Very, very rare, but it can happen. If you're in a motorboat or something that's making a noise, then, or something bigger, then the whales are switched on enough to avoid them most of the time.
Yeah.
But if you're in a fairly silent kayak, what you don't want to do is have a leviathan jump out on your starboard side and then crash on you, because there's not much you can do about that apart from flip over and just hope. I've got all the appropriate gear. I've got dry suits, 1-piece and 2-piece with all the neoprene cuffs and collars. I've got a really good techie setup as well. I've got a sat phone. I've got this GPS. I've got an in-reach radio system. So I've kind of ticked all the boxes on that as well. So I've done as much as I can.
So gear-wise, what about your cooking gear? What are you bringing along with you in that regard?
Yeah, because of the diet, it's plus side of that is that I won't have a huge amount of space for like ration packs or dried food or anything like that. So a lot of the food will be dried. It lasts forever, so I can pick up a good couple of kilo of dried seal or dried amasat, which is little capelin fish, and they're dried intact, so they've got guts and everything in them, and bones. So that's pretty much a one-stop shop for being able to survive on. So it's got everything you need. So I'll have a good amount of that. I'll be fishing as I go. Yeah, last year when I was staying kind of 2 hours north of Nuuk, the capital, I went out every day in a kayak and didn't come back with less than 3 cod. It was amazing. You just put the hook in and you catch a cod. Obviously, it won't be that great the whole way along, but I'll go catch a couple of cods, which will see me through a day or two. So and there's settlements all the way up. So I'll better buy seal or anything else off any hunters as I go. Built up quite a good network in Greenland over the last 3 years. So I've got a lot of contacts who are kind of expecting this Englishman at some point who might be wanting to buy some food. So yeah, that's good. And I don't speak Greenlandic, but I've been learning Danish for the last 3 or 4 months, so I've got a good basic grasp of that. But I'll have a kind of a sheet with all the basic phrases of survival in Greenlandic, like the conditions for kayaking, like safe place to land, tide races, but food as well is going to be critical. Right. So yeah, and it's cold enough that I can keep fresh food on the boat. It'll be about the water temperatures can be about 1 or 2 degrees C.
Oh, wow.
So I'll keep food in there, and it's like my natural fridge anyway. Yeah, so I'm hoping I'll be okay on that as well. And cooking wise, I've just got it's called a prospector's pan. It's just a I think it's 8 or 10 inch wide. I've got a calagas type gas thing in case I need it. There's hardly any wood out there, so I can't rely on building a campfire. So that's why I've got that. But I'll pick up driftwood as I go and shave it off, start a fire that way if I can. If it's been raining for ages, it won't work, so I'll have to go back to the gas. But then a lot of it is kind of fermented, and you can eat raw anyway, so it's going to be interesting. I'll be sick of cod, I reckon, by the time I've finished.
I'm sure.
Well, it sounds really physically intense as well. How do you prepare physically for an expedition like this?
Yeah, I've been doing a lot of gym work. Like the arm bike, where I just get on that for an hour pretty much every day and just do that. I've been in the gym. I've been doing a lot of cardio stuff, a lot of low weight, high repetition arm and torso stuff. So yeah, I think that's as much as you can. I've got a kayak here on the coast as well that I've been out in quite a bit over the winter and stuff. It hasn't been ideal, and if the weather's too rough out here, I won't go out in that. But the gym work has been pretty good, and obviously I'm going to be building up because of the. I think we'll have 8 or 9 hours of sunlight by the time I get there, but when I start, so I won't be able to do huge amounts to start with anyway. So that'll be a gradual build up as well on that. So yeah, I've been doing some a lot of gym work for the last 6 months or so. So I've built up quite a lot on that. So yeah, I don't know what I'll look like at the end of 3 months of doing it, but I suspect I'm hoping I'll be really buff.
Yeah, well, I'm sure you'll get in great shape.
I hope so.
In your daily life, I know that you try to live more sustainably as well.
Yeah.
And I know you and I have talked a bit about your homestead. Tell us a bit about that. How do you try to have that sustainable living in your just regular life as well?
Yeah, we've got about 1.5 acres here, and my partner grows loads of veg, loads of heirloom stuff, stuff that's hasn't been as economically productive, so it's kind of fallen by the wayside commercially, and you don't often see. But it's making a big resurgence now because people are going back to these traditional things that humans have survived on for hundreds, thousands of years. We've got chickens, so we've got chickens, duck, geese, turkeys, so we get a lot of eggs. And I've started to up my meat intake quite a lot. So mostly wild game or organic. It's from around the area where we are. So the thing I'm really kind of anti against, the whole global food system is so reliant and a big driver of climate change at the moment that we need to be, and it's most of it's totally unnecessary. We don't need to be importing avocados from Mexico or apples from New Zealand. And that's one of the things that kind of is highlighted in Greenland. Every little settlement has got a small shop, again subsidized by Denmark, that you can go in and buy frozen pizzas or salamis or cheeses. And fresh fruit. Sometimes you can get kiwi fruit and bananas and stuff in these places, which again they don't grow in England. So it's just as wrong to kind of to buy it from here. But in Greenland, when you look out the window and it's just icebergs, and there's clearly no farming or agriculture going on. The difference is even more stark when you've got an avocado in your hand and you start. It just really makes you aware that the avocado has come on a boat back to Newark from Copenhagen, and it's probably come from a European hub from Mexico City or South Africa or somewhere. And you think, wow, what was that? How did these people survive before we had the transport system? And the answer is you just ate what was available. And it was probably better than having all these kind of monocrop culture foods that are transported all around the world, relying on oil and gas, fertilizer and antibiotics and everything into the water table, microplastics everywhere. You've just got to get away from this whole processed food culture that we have and look around the environment that you're living in, and okay, what would I have been eating 1,000 years ago? And that's how we've evolved as a human race, and we evolve so slowly that it takes thousands of years for any kind of changes to happen, of adaptation to external influences. So it's no wonder that we were ticking along just fine for hundreds of thousands of years, and then in the last, say, 500 or 300 years, since the Industrial Revolution, and we've been importing stuff, pumping chemicals into the earth, and suddenly we've got all these diseases that were unheard of hundreds of years ago, and we've got allergies, intolerances, diseases everywhere, obesity, our immune systems are shot. It's crazy, and you can track it all back to kind of the capitalist kind of ethos behind modern society. And there are some good things to come out of that. The hospital and the healthcare side of the trauma and that kind of thing has been fantastic, but a lot of it is just pointing the finger at shareholders and constant growth that companies need to have to satisfy shareholders. It's
right.
And that's what's driving processed foods, is the need to decrease costs, increase sales, and get it out there. And it's just so wrong. And it's one of those things that has been kind of hidden amongst general life. But if you just think about it and think about, we've evolved with these foods for hundreds of thousands of years, and suddenly we're pumping chemicals and all kinds of rubbish, and it's really low in nutrients. Of course it's going to have an effect. Of course it's going to have a knock-on effect like that. It's crazy, and it's sometimes it's really banging your head against a brick wall and think, oh my God, what? But it is really easy to do as well. It's really easy to go out to shop and buy a frozen pizza rather than go out and shoot a rabbit or grow your own vegetables. Right. So I think it's just something that's got to be, people have got to be made aware of more, and so they can make their own choices on it.
Well, then for someone like me, or probably our listeners who love travel and want to be adventurers, how can we balance the desire to experience different cultures and cuisines with the need to be mindful of that environmental impact.
Yeah, that's a good point. I think air travel is obviously a big one as well. So I don't think there's an answer to it at the moment. Traveling is important, and migration and stuff is what people have been. That's part of the human psyche is traveling, and it would be great if we didn't have to rely on money, so we could make our way to Greenland or these exotic places over the course of a few months, or in a sailboat, or so it would be fantastic. But modern life makes it pretty much impossible to happen. So I think you just got to be super aware of it, and if you can mitigate it, I know you can buy offset. You offset your carbon load and all this kind of stuff. But if you dig beneath the surface on that, it takes decades for any kind of sequestering to happen. If you do plant a tree scheme or anything like that, so it is difficult, and it is something that I struggle with, like flying to Greenland. Sure. But then, if you're doing something good when you're there, like raising awareness, or I'll be kayaking, so I'm not relying on any diesel or fossil fuels once I'm there, and hopefully, if I can get a message out there and assist in that way, then that's great. That might be just justifying it to myself, though. It probably is just better to stay in your own home country, and then have a look at what your air travel is contributing to it. And again, and it may be me justifying it, but if you weigh that up against these companies that are pumping out millions times more than what I'll be taking up on the plane, then that's another way I justify it. But it is difficult flying to these areas, and I don't think there's a clear answer for it as well, because if you're bringing that message to people and you can make a slight difference to 10 people, then that'll make a bigger difference than your plane flight as well.
Well, I think so many people just don't think about it, and I think just acknowledging it and being aware is just a huge step anyway. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it's just one of those things that it's got to be ingrained in you, and it's become that way over here in England. Recycling and stuff 15, 20 years ago didn't happen, but people are you expect it now. It's just one of those things, but it does take a long time to kind of sink into the psyche. But I think that's accelerating now. With people are getting increasingly aware of corrupt governments and just helping out governments, giving great grants and contracts to their mates. Big business. I think people are a lot more aware now that it's just about the bottom line to these guys.
I think so too.
And there are huge movements. Really good. So I think it's coming, but we'll see if it's in time.
Yeah, I certainly hope so.
Yeah.
On that note, have you always been environmentally conscious, or was there sort of an event that triggered it? Where did this sort of mindfulness in you come from?
Yeah, it's a good question. I think it's come from. I have had it a long time, and I think it's come from chefing and being aware of the waste, and then you question everything. You question why these rules are there. Don't just blindly accept it, which you do as a kid. You just believe in the authority of government, but as you get older, you think these guys, they're now younger than me. They clearly don't know what they're doing. They're just making it up as they go along, like most of us. Right. But they've never acknowledged that. It's always that you have this kind of omnipresent authority figure that you always relied on when you were a kid, and you think, it will never be bad because they'll sort you out and they'll look after us and it'll be okay. But I think increasingly that's shown not to be the case at all. So I think I've always questioned why things need to be done, not in a belligerent pain in the backside way, but just okay. So what happens if you eat that bread that's just got a little bit of mold on, or a big thing for me actually was the process of making salami and cured meats here in the UK. I wanted to make salami, and the environmental health, according to their regulations and paperwork, it couldn't be done. And they said, right, you can't keep it out of temperature, you can't keep it out 10 or 11 degrees for any amount of time, because that's not how it's done. What? You've got Parma ham.
That's how it's made, right?
You've got all these amazing cured meats on the continent in Europe. So how have they done it? So how is that a thing over there, and no one's dying by the millions, eating that? Don't care. It's just can't be done. You've got to keep it in the fridge. And so that got me down the whole kind of rabbit hole of looking at fridges and why fridges were used. And then you just scratch beneath the surface, and fridges have only, it's only really in the last two generations. Like in I think in 1963 in England, only 5% of domestic households had a fridge. So it's like, wow, that's you can always touch that. It wasn't long after I was born, and it's It's crazy. It's absolutely crazy. So what were we doing before then? We were fermenting. We were preserving stuff. We had much more community. We were much more community-minded. So instead of getting everything into that one household, we relied on, say, 10 households, and we had a community pig. Bert down the road grew potatoes, and we grew beetroot, so we swapped occasionally and then bartered.
Right.
And it's something we need to get back into, because the way we've done it for hundreds of thousands of years is what's good for us, evolutionary and for our physiology. So constantly question stuff, which I think is happening a lot more now with what's going on in the news, and it can only be a healthy thing. And get back to that community thing. And if you can set up 10 people or 10 households and say, okay, we've all got small gardens, but you grow potatoes, you grow tomatoes, and we'll just barter it. Or like us here, we're going to get a couple of pigs, and we'll get a scheme here, and everyone will chip in 10 or 20 pounds or whatever. And when we come to slaughter the pig, we'll chop it up, and everyone gets a tenth of the pig. Which is great, and it's been fed organically. It's had a really, really good life. It hasn't been packed up into crates in a factory farm and had a really rubbish life and effectively tortured until it dies.
Right.
Just ask questions. Always look into the provenance of your food, where it's come from, how it's produced, and just because it says honeysuckle farm on the label, it doesn't mean it comes from this idyllic, beautiful, pastoral picture. It probably means it's just a marketing tool by the supermarket or whoever, and it's been produced by the millions, fed full of antibiotics and rubbish, had a rubbish life, and is actually not that great for you. So yeah,
No, I think that's
A good guideline for life anyway. Just question things. Don't accept things blindly.
yeah, for sure.
I like that. Well, so Mike, are you going to be documenting your adventure? And where can people find that?
Right, on mikekeane.co, that's my website. I'll have a live tracker. One of my devices will have a live tracker, and there'll be a map on the website, so you can track where I am going up the coast. I've got a whole bunch of kind of GoPros and a drone, and I'll be taking loads of footage as I go. So there's normally pretty good reception nearly all the way up the coast as well. I've got a Greenlandic phone, so I'll be posting on Instagram, which is Mike Keane Cooks. I'll be on, and that automatically goes to my Facebook, which again is Mike Keane Cooks. Find it on there. Quite an interesting development is I've got a Norwegian filmmaker who will be turning it into a documentary, which is really exciting.
Wow.
And so we've got a Greenlandic videographer who's going to be hopping on a boat and kind of following me for half a day once every 10 or 12 days. And they'll be using my footage from the drone and the GoPros.
Right. How cool.
And doing that. So, yeah, so watch this space. Everything I do will be on the website anyway, so you'll be able to find out about that. But hopefully, the documentary will be touted around film festivals in the new year. So fingers crossed for that one, because that would be great.
That's excellent. I'm excited for that. We'll have links to all of that in the show notes, of course, so anyone listening to this episode will be able to click on those and go right over and check it out. Yeah, but I'm super excited to see it and to see your pictures and your videos. And
yeah, well, I'd love to come back on if you have me afterwards and let you know what happens.
Let's have a recap.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
If I don't get eaten by a bear.
It's a plan. It's a plan. I would love to hear all about it.
Brilliant stuff. Well, thanks for having me.
Gosh.
Thank you so much, Mike. I'm glad we finally got the chance to do this.
Yeah, great.
We had a bit of some troubles before, but I'm glad we finally made it work. It was a blast.
Me too.
Absolutely, you will be back on. I would love to hear the recap.
Brilliant.
When you're done.
I'll be there.
All right. Thank you so much. You take care, sir.
All right.
I'm going to be very excited to follow him on his journey, and I've already told him after he gets back, I'd love to have him back on to kind of talk about how things went. Talk about the adventures that he had there. Did he run into a polar bear or a whale? I certainly hope not.
A polar whale.
Ooh, yes.
A
whale bear.
A polar bear.
Humpback bear.
It just sounds gross. I don't know what that is, and I don't like it. But yeah, awesome. Just an awesome dude. Ladies and gentlemen, please go check out Mike Keane. Give him all your support. He's a really awesome guy, and just what he's doing and what he stands for is just great. Just awesome.
Yep. Links in the show notes to all of that.
Yes, to everything. All right, and now you ready to move on to our favorite segment, which is Adventures in the News?
Yes, sir.
I wouldn't necessarily call this an adventure, but Adventures in the News often is just funny news.
True.
Michael, you know what I say when I say the Texas stop sign. Do you know what I'm referring to?
Actually, I don't know if I...
You don't?
do. I mean, I don't drive very often, to be honest.
Dairy Queen.
Oh,
Stop
okay.
sign. Dairy
Gotcha.
Queen. Now, this is a story that involves Dairy Queen. And if you get a blizzard at Dairy Queen,
They turn it upside down.
it comes with a big red spoon.
Ah, okay. Now I see where where this is going. Okay.
Arizona Dairy Queen had its big red spoon that was on the outside of the restaurant stolen.
How? Is that not part of like the sign? Is it not like
It is part of the sign.
right? So it's built into the side of the
and somebody
thing.
stole it. This is not a little spoon.
It's like stealing the golden arches.
Yeah, it'd be like stealing the McDonald's Golden Arches. And so it was found around 7 a.m., 2 miles away from the scene of the heist. They're calling it a heist.
It didn't get very far. That's how did they get it, and why did they just dump it?
I would keep it.
I mean,
If you're going to go through all that trouble, keep
yeah,
it.
really.
Like, you could just put it in your living room.
That is so funny. Yeah,
Say you had a few too many,
right.
adult beverages.
That's the only thing that makes sense in this scenario.
Say you had a few too many adult beverages. You don't really know what you're doing. And you wake up and you have the Dairy Queen giant spoon.
You panic.
Yes, but don't you just keep it?
It's kind of like when there's like art heists and these famous paintings like the Scream, which has gone missing. Once you have it, though, you don't dare display it. What's the point, right? You have it, but you can't have it like you can't display it. You can't have it showing. You have to have it in some secret room in your mansion, right?
For
These
like
people that have
your own private view.
right. So do you have to build like a special secret like room for this where only like your trusted friends that come over for a billionaire party get to look at it? Like you pull down the book on the bookshelf and the bookshelf swings back and it's a secret room with the big spoon inside of it. The big spoon and the Scream.
I would you get both. It's really just someone, he's got all the famous paintings he wants, and now he's just off like, he has he has like the golden arches. And
Do you remember when that golden toilet was stolen a couple years ago?
Yes.
It's like that, and that's in there too. Just all the dumb stuff people have stolen. Like that shark that somebody...
Oh yeah, someone stole a shark. But I'm thinking about the spoon. I would, like, if I woke up and it was like in my living room.
Right.
I mean, you don't go turn yourself in at that point.
It's not a big enough deal to feel guilty about, I would say. Maybe a little guilty.
Like a little bit, but more like a what was I doing kind of thing than a...
Be more confused than anything, I think.
Yeah, I feel like you're going to get in a lot more trouble if you like went back and were like, hey...
I stole your spoon.
I stole your spoon, I'm sorry. Then you're going to get like charges. But if you just keep the spoon, you have a secret.
It's like the frat houses with the road signs,
Oh yeah. Or if you grew up in Texas, did you ever have a Whataburger? They have the little wood table numbers.
I know what you're talking about. I don't possess one. I do not have one, no. But I do know what you mean. The table like number where they bring you your order.
Yes.
I do have a no smoking sign from a hotel that I didn't mean to steal. It just somehow ended up in my luggage, and I was unpacking after this trip, and I was like, a no smoking sign. That. It's a little metal, like a little stainless steel.
You know what I do? I do have Chili's used to bring you their skillet queso in an actual hot skillet.
Right.
And it had a little handle cover with little chili peppers on it. I have one of those. I don't know how I got it.
Come to think of it, I think my roommates and I did one time have a heist where we each procured a set of silverware from the dining hall. But I'm pretty sure the statute of limitations is over now. Hang on. What is it? Statute of limitations for stealing silverware, which actually is... okay, it's fine.
No, you're good.
If the property is below $950, you may only have 1 year to file a misdemeanor charge. If it's more serious cases, 4-year statute of life. If you're out of college for over 10 years, it's fine.
You are good. You can finally clear your conscience.
And I took a spoon and a fork. We all did. And we made a blood pact, never to speak of it. But the statute of limitations is over, and it's...
They can only try you in civil court now. You're going to get a letter from Baylor.
I have more than given them the price of a spoon, so... I think we're even. It wasn't even a Baylor spoon. We just needed them.
You just needed silverware. I did have a friend that would go, they have the milk dispenser.
Yes.
She had a gallon jug that she bought one time and just would refill the gallon jug with milk. She eventually downsized to a half gallon because you don't know how long the milk's going to last.
And the thing is, in college, no one's going to question that. Everyone's like, yeah, why not?
Everyone looks at you like, it's a good idea. I should do that. But anyway, that's Adventures in the News.
Well, that's funny. You're right. Okay, Texas stop sign. I do understand what you mean by that. It is the only time I go to Dairy Queen.
And I like Dairy Queen.
I do too, but have you ever just been at home and be like, I want Dairy Queen? No, it's only when you're driving somewhere on a road trip. And they're all exactly the same on the inside.
Oh, yeah. And the thing is, now they have the DQ Grill and Chill, and they're not as good. They're all fancy and like clean.
Dairy Queen shouldn't be clean.
No, everything should be sticky.
A little bit sticky, yeah.
Like, the tables all have to be either sticky or wet. And the floor has to 100% be kind of sticky.
Yeah, your shoes have to go like...
And it's either run by very, very friendly, like, elderly people, or really, like, over it, like, 15-year-olds.
Yep.
There's no in between.
True.
The food and everything else is the exact same no matter what.
You know what's hilarious? There's Dairy Queen in Bangkok at all the malls. I'm like, this is not right. Dairy Queen shouldn't be at a shopping mall. It needs to be on some little, like, abandoned road where it's the only place to stop for, like, 50 miles.
So if any of you out there have never had Dairy Queen, seek one out.
You will not be disappointed.
You will not. Or maybe you will, but I don't really care.
You'll be disappointed if you dine in. If you just get a Blizzard to go, you'll be happy.
You will be disappointed if you expect anything other than...
kind of sticky.
Everything's... It's like... Dairy Queen is to McDonald's what Waffle House is to, like...
Denny's?
IHOP. It's better, but also worse.
Do you think... Yeah, well, okay, I was going to say, do you really think Waffle House is better than IHOP?
I do.
Do you really?
I do.
The only reason I'm not on the IHOP train, really, is about that one time that they refused to give us our free meal after the Rangers
That was
won.
Denny's.
Are you sure? I thought
it was Denny's
IHOP.
Grand Slam because we went to a Rangers game, we went to Denny's afterwards, and he would not give us our 2 free Grand Slams because we were sitting at the same table.
And we're paying separately. He didn't even
he was
believe
like,
us
I don't care.
at the beginning that the Rangers had won. I'm like, that is easily verifiable, sir.
But anyway, all right, everyone. Thank you so much for listening to Michael and I chat. Hope you enjoyed it. And I hope you also enjoyed the great interview with Mike Keene. Make sure you go check out all of his stuff. We'll have links in the show notes to all his information, all his socials, everything. If you want more Attempt Adventure content, you can find us anywhere you get your podcast at Attempt Adventure. You can find us on Instagram, also at Attempt Adventure. And you can find us in 2 different places on YouTube. Michael, you want to tell it real quick, just so I make sure I get it right?
Yeah, if you just want to listen to the episodes, you can go to Attempt Adventure Podcast. If you want to see our videos, games, and bonus content, you can go to @Attempt Adventure. And you can find us there where we do things like play GeoGuessr or Geotastic, a City Guesser, and do our little bonus videos like last week when we did our photo walk, Micro Adventure here in Waco.
Yeah.
You can check us out on Twitter @AttemptPod. I don't get or care for Twitter, so
do it if you
won't
want.
see much there. But Instagram, we're doing a lot better with Instagram
Yes.
and YouTube and Facebook, of course.
Yes.
Attempt Adventure.
Check us out anywhere, any of those, and you will not be disappointed. Also, make sure to visit our website, www.attemptadventure.com, where you can find blog posts, pictures, show notes, links to all of the previous episodes, and a handy little contact us button so you can send us listener mail, suggestions, anything you want. Alternatively to that, you can also email us directly, hello@attemptadventure.com, and it comes right to us.
Both of us.
Yeah, we both get it. We both read it.
We do.
If you're feeling generous, please go and leave a review on the podcast. It helps us grow. It helps us just reach more people. A 5-star one if you're feeling, just generous. But we value honesty over platitudes. Yeah, it's been another great episode talking to you all. Michael, you got anything else to add?
I do not.
All right. Well, again, everybody, it's been great talking to you. And until next time,
Keep adventuring.